remembering those that survived the sinking of the RMS Titanic on April 15, 1912. The information provided was obtained and used from findagrave.com. This video contains passengers and employees with the last names starting with C. The remaining survivors will follow shortly. Edward Pennington Calderhead Jr., born 1869, in Pennsylvania. His occupation was listed as a buyer for a toy department. Edward boarded the Titanic as a first-class passenger. He was rescued by Lifeboat 5. Edward passed away in 1961 due to dropsy. He was buried in California. The next survivor is the Caldwell family. Husband, Albert Caldwell. Wife, Sylvia Caldwell. Son, Alden Gates Caldwell. Albert Francis Caldwell, born 1885, in Iowa. He met Sylvia at college in Missouri. They were married in 1909. Albert boarded the Titanic along with his wife and 10-month-old son. They were rescued in Lifeboat 13. In 1922, he was a high school principal in Wisconsin. Albert and Sylvia divorced in 1930. He settled in Virginia, where he remarried and worked as a state farm agent until retirement in 1957. Albert passed away in 1977 at the age of 91. He was buried in North Carolina. Sylvia May Harbaugh Caldwell Metcherly, born 1883, in Pennsylvania. In 1944, Sylvia remarried to Mr. Metcherly in Arkansas. Sylvia was a member of the church, Chapter 50 of Order of the Eastern Star, a life member of the Bloomington Country Club, and the Bloomington Normal Art Association. She was also a member of the Brokaw Hospital and was also an active participant in the community players. In her later years, Sylvia made her home, with her other son, in Illinois. Sylvia passed away in 1965, at the age of 81, due to pneumonia. She was buried in Illinois. Alden Gates Caldwell, born 1911, in Thailand. At his father's funeral, he met fellow Titanic survivor, Frank Axe. Alden passed away in 1992, at the age of 81. He was buried in Illinois. The next survivor is Claire Annie Cameron Francis, born 1877, in England. She boarded the Titanic as a second-class passenger and was accompanied by another woman. They both were rescued in Lifeboat 14. Claire married Mr. Francis and moved back to England. She suffered mental problems following the sinking of the Titanic. Claire passed away in 1962, at the age of 84. She was buried in England. The next survivor is Helen Churchill Hungerford Candy, born 1858, in New York. She spent most of her childhood in Connecticut. Helen married Mr. Candy, and they had 2 children. Her husband was abusive and abandoned the family. Helen supported herself and the children by writing popular magazines such as Scribner's and the Ladies' Home Journal. In 1895, she arrived in the Oklahoma Territory. Her stories about the region helped catapult her as a journalist. In 1896, Helen divorced her husband. Helen then moved to Washington, D.C., where she was the first professional interior decorators. Her clients included the Secretary of War, Henry Stimson, and President Theodore Roosevelt. Helen pursued serving on civic boards and was involved in democratic politics. She was active in many art institutions. Helen wrote a total of 8 books. She was in Europe when her son was injured in an automobile accident. Helen booked her passage on the Titanic. She was getting into Lifeboat 6, but fell in the process, fracturing her ankle. Helen shared the lifeboat with the famous unsinkable Molly Brown. Her injury required her to walk with a cane for almost a year. By March 1913, Helen joined the Votes for Women parade, riding her horse at the head of the procession. Helen worked with the American Red Cross during World War I. One of her patients was Ernest Hemingway. As late as 1936, Helen was almost 80 years of age, still traveling and writing articles for the National Geographic magazine. Helen passed away in 1949, at the age of 90, in her summer cottage, located in Maine, where she was buried. The next survivor is the Cardeza family. Mother, Charlotte Waddell Drake Cardeza. Son, Thomas Drake Martinez Cardeza. Charlotte was born 1854, in England. Her father owned the T. Drake and Company, which manufactured wool clothing, and created a fortune in the production of denim jeans. Charlotte married Mr. Cardeza in 1874, and lived in an extravagant mansion, in Pennsylvania. She boarded the Titanic with her son and her maid. They occupied the most expensive suites on the Titanic. Thomas Drake Martinez Cardeza, born 1875, in Pennsylvania. He boarded the Titanic with his mother and his manservant. Charlotte and her entourage brought with them 14 trunks, 4 suitcases, and 3 crates of baggage. On that fateful night, the Cardezas and their servants were rescued in Lifeboat 3. Charlotte would later file a claim to the value of £36,567, or $178,000. The claim totaled 16 pages of detailed descriptions. It included 90 pairs of gloves, a $6,000 chinchilla coat, and an almost 7-carat pink diamond from Tiffany's, valued at $20,000. Charlotte did not receive the compensation she asked for. A lump sum was reached for all claims. Charlotte had the Drake Mausoleum at Laurel Hill Cemetery moved across the river to West Laurel Hill Cemetery in Pennsylvania. In 1939, Charlotte passed away at the age of 85 due to heart failure. Thomas passed away in 1952 at the age of 77. The next survivor is the Carter family. Father, William Ernest Carter. Mother, Lucille Stewart Polk Brooke. Daughter, Lucille Polk Carter Reeves. Son, William Thornton Carter, II. William Ernest Carter, born 1875, in Pennsylvania. He was an American polo player, society figure, and a millionaire heir. The family ranked among the Philadelphia's most prominent. In 1912, William, his wife and their 2 children boarded the Titanic as first-class passengers. They were accompanied by their servants, maid, and chauffeur. The Carters attended dinner in honor of Captain Smith. When the Titanic sank, William secured a place in the lifeboat C and reached the Carpathia about 15 minutes ahead of his wife and children. Among the losses was his imported 25-horsepower Renault automobile. After the disaster, William resumed his active social and sporting life. Later in 1912, William was seriously injured while playing polo. Not long after the tragedy, the marriage ended in divorce. William continued to spend his winters in Florida through the 1930s. He passed away in 1940 at the age of 64. William was buried in the Carter Mausoleum, located at the West Laurel Hill Cemetery in Pennsylvania. Lucille Stewart Polk Carter, born 1875, in Pennsylvania. She was an American socialite, whose beauty, daring, and unconventional spirit made her a celebrated figure in New York and Pennsylvania society. The Polk family traces its lineage to President James K. Polk. Lucille was athletic, and was reported to be the first woman to play polo, riding astride. She became well known for driving a 6-horse carriage through crowded city streets. One summer, she astonished Rhode Islanders by appearing dressed entirely in flaming red. Following her divorce, Lucille married Mr. Brooke Jr. in 1916. They had 1 daughter together. In 1934, Lucille passed away in her home at the age of 59. She is buried in the St. Michael's Cemetery, located in Pennsylvania. Lucille Polk Carter Reeves, born 1897, in Pennsylvania. She boarded the Titanic along with her parents and brother. They were rescued in Lifeboat 4. Lucille married Mr. Reeves, and they had 2 children. In 1962, Lucille passed away in her daughter's home, at the age of 64. At the time of her death, Lucille had 6 grandchildren and was residing in South Carolina. Lucille was buried in the Washington Memorial Park, located in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. William Thornton Carter II, born 1900, in Rhode Island. On that fateful night, legend has it that no more boys were allowed onto lifeboats. John Jacob Astor put a woman's hat on William and told him to join his family. The story was never confirmed, since William, as an adult, was a recluse who never discussed the Titanic disaster. William passed away in 1985, at the age of 84. He was buried with his father, in the Carter Mausoleum, in Bala Cynwyd, Pennsylvania. The next survivor is Eleanor Genevieve Fosdick Casimir, born 1875, in Indiana. She was 36 years of age when she boarded the Titanic. Eleanor was a first-class passenger. She survived the sinking in Lifeboat 5 and was picked up by the Carpathia. Eleanor resided in New York. She passed away in 1970, at the age of 94. Eleanor's burial details are unknown. The next survivor is Annie Cotton Howland, born 1879, in England. She was a Turkish bath stewardess on the Titanic. Annie survived the sinking in Lifeboat 11. She married Mr. Howland in 1930. Annie passed away in 1947 at the age of 68 due to cancer. She was cremated and her ashes are in Section 6, Position 5 at the Newcastle Memorial Park, in New South Wales, Australia. The next survivor is George Henry Cavell, born 1889, in England. He was a trimmer on the Titanic. George was on duty when the Titanic struck the iceberg. During the collision, he was nearly crushed to death by the coal in the boiler room. He took part in the attempt to keep the Titanic afloat until the Carpathia rescued them. George was rescued in Lifeboat 15 after leaving the boiler room 4, which was starting to flood. He testified at the British inquiry. In 1919, George was married. George passed away in 1966 at the age of 76. He was buried in England in an unmarked grave. The next survivor is Julia Florence Siegel Cavendish, born 1886, in Illinois. There is no information available on this individual. I am leaving this lily for you, you are not forgotten. The information provided was obtained and used from the Encyclopedia Titanica website. Julia's mother passed away when she was 1 month old, at the age of 24. She was an attractive and popular young woman, traveling to Britain in 1906. Julia proved a great social favorite within the fashionable London circles. She caught the eye of Tyrrell William Cavendish, a wealthy aristocrat and cousin to the Duke of Devonshire. In 1906, Tyrrell and Julia were married, at her parents' home in New York. The newlywed couple sailed for England, where they would make their home. Julia became Lady Cavendish. In 1907, Julia was among a number of brides presented to their majestic King Edward VII and Queen Alexandra at Buckingham Palace. Julia and Tyrrell had 2 sons. In 1912, Julia boarded the Titanic with her husband and her maid and were first-class passengers. They were traveling to New York to visit her father. Julia and her maid were rescued in Lifeboat 6, but Tyrrell perished in the sinking. The loss of her husband was only the first in a series of woes for Julia. Julia's husband not only left her with 2 small children, but with a lawsuit on her hands. The suit was for the possession of her home, Craigmarsh Hall. The claimant was an elderly, one-legged cab driver, who claimed a large sum of the money, estimated at $1 million. Julia never remarried, and remained the wealthy dowager of the Craigmarsh Hall, where she lived the rest of her life. She continued to travel many times, but apart from that, little else is known about her life. Julia passed away in 1963 at the age of 76 due to heart failure. Her personal estate was valued at £5,266 or $14,700. The money was divided between her two sons. Julia was cremated, and her ashes were interred in the Golders Green Crematorium in England. In the late 1960s, the Craigmarsh Hall came out of the Cavendish hands. It was later abandoned altogether, and in 1970, it burned, eventually being demolished in 1980. The next survivor is Carrie Constance Toogood Chaffee, born 1864, in Iowa. In 1886, Carrie entered into the Oberlin College, studying Conservatory of Music and Art. But in 1887, she met Herbert Chaffee, and they married. Mr. Chaffee owned the Amenia Sharon Land Company. Carrie gave voice lessons while managing a complex household, giving birth to 6 children. They boarded the Titanic as first-class passengers after returning from a European trip. Carrie was rescued in Lifeboat 4, but Mr. Chaffee perished in the sinking. Pictured here is the wrap she wore on the Titanic. It is in the San Diego Maritime Museum. After her husband's death, Carrie managed the land company assets. Carrie was a leader in charitable work and a charter member. She passed away in 1931 at the age of 66. She was buried in North Dakota. The next survivor is the Chambers family. Husband, Norman Campbell Chambers. Wife, Bertha Griggs Chambers. Norman Campbell Chambers, born 1884, in New York. He was a mechanical engineer and was married to Bertha. Bertha Griggs Chambers, born 1879, in New York. The couple remained childless and divided their time traveling from Manhattan to Ithaca. In 1912, the Chambers boarded the Titanic and were first-class passengers. On the night of the sinking, they were in bed. Bertha asked her husband to go and investigate, not finding anything amiss. Norman returned, and the couple went back out to reinvestigate. Returning back to their cabin, they saw 2 male clerks, wet to their knees. After being informed by another passenger, the call had been given for people to put on life belts. Bertha entered into Lifeboat 5, calling for her husband to join her. They both were rescued by the Carpathia. In 1941, the Chambers drove their 1929 Studs across the Pyrenees Mountains, fleeing from the Germans. In 1959, Bertha passed away at the age of 80. After Bertha passed away, Norman remarried. In 1966, Norman passed away at the age of 81 due to cerebral thrombosis. They were both buried together in New York. The next survivor is Joseph Charles Chapman, born 1879, in England. He was a boots steward, second class. Joseph was rescued in Lifeboat 9. He passed away in 1939 at the age of 59. Joseph is buried in England in an unmarked grave. The next survivor is Victorine Chaudanson Perkins, born 1875, in France. She boarded the Titanic and was rescued in Lifeboat 4. Victorine later married Mr. Perkins. She passed away in 1962 at the age of 86. Victorine was buried in Pennsylvania. The next survivor is Gladys Cherry Pringle, born 1881, in England. There is no information available on this individual. I am leaving this lily for you, you are not forgotten. The following information was obtained and used from the Encyclopedia Titanica website. Gladys boarded the Titanic along with her cousin, the Countess of Rothes, and her maid. The 3 ladies were rescued in Lifeboat 8. Later, Gladys wrote to able seaman Thomas Jones, who had been in the lifeboat with them. In 1928, Gladys returned to England and married Mr. Pringle, a retired Royal Artillery major. They had no children. Gladys passed away in 1965, at the age of 83, due to heart failure. Gladys was cremated, and her ashes were scattered in Tennyson Lake Garden, at the crematorium, located in London. The next survivor is Paul Romain Marie Léonce Chevre, born 1866, in Belgium. He was a famous sculptor. Paul boarded the Titanic as a first-class passenger. He was rescued in Lifeboat 7. In 1914, Paul passed away in Paris, at the age of 47, due to kidney disease. Paul was buried in France, but the headstone has since been removed. The next survivor is Edith Martha Barber Chibnall, born 1864, in England. In 1888, Edith married a man, 25 years her senior. He was her employer, Mr. Bowerman. In 1907, Edith remarried to Mr. Chibnall. Edith boarded the Titanic as a first-class passenger, and was accompanied by her daughter. They both were rescued in Lifeboat 6. Edith passed away in 1953, at the age of 89, due to heart failure. She was buried in England, where she shares a grave with her daughter. The next survivor is Chang Chip, born 1860, in Hong Kong. He boarded the Titanic, and was a third-class passenger. Chang was 32 years of age, and his occupation was listed as an able seaman. However, it also states that he was the ship's cook, and the Encyclopedia Titanica has him as a fireman. Chang survived the sinking, in collapsible lifeboat C, by the Carpathia. He passed away in 1914, at the age of 33, due to pneumonia. Chang's death record has his name as Chong Chip. He was buried in England. The next survivor is the Christie family. Mother, Alice Frances Christie. Daughter, Rachel Julie Cohen Christie. Alice Frances Christie, born 1860, in England. Rachel Julie Cohen Christie, born 1887, in England. There is not much information available on these two women. The following information was obtained and used from the Encyclopedia Titanica website. I am leaving this lily for you, you are not forgotten. After Alice's first husband passed away, she placed her two daughters in an orphan asylum, unable to take care of them. When Alice remarried to Mr. Christie, Julie and her sister adopted the last name Christie as their own. Julie boarded the Titanic together with her mother, sister, and her brother-in-law. They were second-class passengers. The family was traveling to Canada. The three women survived the sinking, being rescued by the Carpathia. Julie never married, and spent her last days living in a hotel located in London. In 1931, Julie went into the hospital for an operation for appendicitis. She passed away from thrombosis at the age of 44. Julie's estate was valued at £4,807 or $21,800 and was passed on to her mother. Alice passed away in 1939 at the age of 78. Their burial details are unknown. The next survivor is Estelle Virginia McDowell Tanner, born 1886, in Montana. She boarded the Titanic with her husband, Mr. Clark, and they were first-class passengers. Virginia was rescued in Lifeboat 4. Her husband perished in the sinking. Virginia passed away in 1958, at the age of 72. She was buried in California. The next survivor is A. William Clark, born 1869, in Northern Ireland. He was married to Jane Humphrey. Mr. Clark was a fireman on the Titanic. He survived the sinking in Lifeboat 15. Mr. Clark not only survived the Titanic, he also survived the Empress of Ireland. His death and burial details are unknown. The next survivor is Ada Maria Winfield Clark, born 1884, in England. She boarded the Titanic with her husband, and they were second-class passengers. Ada survived the sinking by being rescued in Lifeboat 14. Her husband perished in the sinking. Ada passed away in 1953, at the age of 68. She was buried in England. The next survivor is Alice Catherine Cleaver, born 1889, in England. She boarded the Titanic as a first-class passenger, and was the nursemaid for Trevor, the son of the Allison family. When the Titanic sank, Alice took baby Trevor, and they boarded into Lifeboat 11. Sadly, Mrs. Allison did not allow her daughter to leave her sight, until they found Trevor. This cost the life of Mr. and Mrs. Allison, and their daughter. The remaining Allison family blamed Alice for their deaths. History has been unfair to Alice, claiming she murdered her baby before the Titanic disaster. Alice was mistaken for another woman, named Alice Mary Cleaver, the woman who was the child murderer. She married Mr. Williams, and later, they had 2 daughters. Alice passed away in 1984, at the age of 95, due to a stroke. She was cremated at the Garden of Remembrance in England. The next survivor is Frederick Charles Clench, born 1878, in England. He and his brother worked on the Titanic as seamen. When the Titanic hit the iceberg, he was awoken by the collision. Frederick was placed in charge of Lifeboat 12. After the sinking, his lifeboat helped rescue Second Officer Charles Light Roller and others that were on top of an overturned collapsible B. His brother perished in the sinking. Frederick never married and continued to work at sea. He passed away in 1930, at the age of 51. Frederick was buried in England. The next survivor is Gershon Cohen, born 1893, in England. He was a third-class passenger on the Titanic. Gershon was 18 years of age and unemployed at the time. He was rescued in Lifeboat 12. Gershon passed away in 1977, at the age of 84, due to kidney failure. He was buried in England. The next survivor is Joseph Colgan, born 1879, in Ireland. This gentleman is not on the Find a Grave website. The following information was obtained and used from Encyclopedia Titanica website. Joseph was an assistant cook for the Titanic. His monthly income was £3 or $14.60. Joseph was possibly rescued in Lifeboat 13. He was apparently refused any relief from the Titanic Fund. Joseph had no dependents and was able to work. He most likely returned back to sea. His date of death and burial information is unknown. The next survivor is Sidney Clarence Stewart Collett, born 1887, in England. He was a second-class passenger. Sidney was rescued in Lifeboat 9 by the Carpathia. He was 25 years of age at the time of the disaster. Sidney passed away in 1941 at the age of 54 due to cancer. He was buried in England. The next survivor is Sergeant John Lawrence Collins, also known as Samuel Collins, born 1874, in England. There is no information available on this individual. I am leaving this lily for you, you are not forgotten. The following information was obtained and used from the Encyclopedia Titanica website. In 1902, he was married to 17-year-old Harriet Farley, and they had 1 son. John signed on to the Titanic as a fireman, and his monthly income was £6 or $29.20. He was rescued in Lifeboat 1, and was later called to testify at the British inquiry into the disaster. In 1916, John remarried, giving his name as John Lawrence Collins. There is no evidence that John and Harriet ever divorced. John served in France with the CEF, where he was wounded and discharged. His second wife had 2 daughters with John. John passed away in 1950, at the age of 76, due to cancer. He was buried in Canada. The next survivor is John Collins, born 1894, in Ireland. He was a scullion on the Titanic. When the Titanic sank, he was with a steward, trying to save a woman and her 3 daughters. But when a wave washed over them, only John surfaced. John climbed aboard the upside-down lifeboat B. He testified at the American inquiry on the sinking. In later years, John lived with his wife's family. He later suffered from the deleterious effects of syphilis, and was soon paralyzed, as a result of his illness. He was committed to a psychiatric facility, where John passed away in 1941, at the age of 46. His burial details are unknown, but was buried in Ireland. The next survivor is the Collier family. Mother, Charlotte Caroline Tate Collier. Daughter, Marjorie Lottie Collier Dutton. Charlotte Caroline Tate Collier, born 1881, in England. In 1901, she was working as a domestic cook. In 1903, she is thought to have met her husband while working there. The family were moving to Idaho, where they intended to buy a fruit farm. She boarded the Titanic with her husband and daughter as second-class passengers. When the Titanic sank, Charlotte and Marjorie survived the sinking in lifeboat 14. Mr. Collier perished in the sinking. In 1914, Charlotte remarried to Mr. Holm, and went to live in a pub with her husband. She passed away in 1916, at the age of 35, due to tuberculosis. Charlotte is buried in England, in front of the St. Mary's Church, on the right. Marjorie Lottie Collier Dutton, born 1904, in England. She was 8 years old, at the time, when she boarded the Titanic. After the sinking, Marjorie and her mother did not stay very long in the United States, before deciding to return home. After her mother passed away, Marjorie went to live with her uncle. In 1927, Marjorie married Mr. Dutton. They were married in the same church her parents were married in. They had 1 child together, who passed away at an early age. However, there is no known record for this child. After the passing of her husband, Marjorie continued to work as a doctor's receptionist. Marjorie passed away in 1965, at the age of 61. She was cremated and her ashes were shipped to London. The whereabouts of her ashes are private. The next survivor is George Combs, born 1877, in England. He was a fireman on the Titanic and his monthly income was £6 or $29.20. George passed away in 1916, at the age of 38, due to tuberculosis. He was buried in England, in an unmarked grave. The next survivor is the Compton family. Mother, Mary Eliza Ingersoll Compton. Daughter, Sarah Rebecca Compton. Mary Eliza Ingersoll Compton, born 1847, in New York. She boarded the Titanic with her daughter and son. Mary and Sarah survived the sinking in lifeboat 14. Her son perished in the sinking. Mary lived all her life between homes in New York and New Jersey. She also had a summer residence at the Laurel House in New Jersey. Mary was traveling to North Carolina to a winter retreat when she passed away in 1930, at the age of 83. She was buried in New Jersey. Sarah Rebecca Compton, born 1872, in New York. She never married after the Titanic disaster. Sarah passed away in 1952, at the age of 80. She was cremated and her cenotaph is located in New Jersey. The next survivor is Catherine Connolly Arkins, born 1888, in Ireland. She decided to join her sister in New York. Catherine boarded the Titanic and was a third-class passenger. On the night of the sinking, Kate and her roommates made their way to the upper deck. They were able to escape in lifeboat 13. The presence of 2 Irish women, named Kate Connolly on board the Titanic, initially caused confusion on both sides of the Atlantic. Another woman from Tipperary was lost in the sinking. In 1916, Catherine married Mr. Arkins. They settled in New York and had 4 sons. Catherine passed away in 1948 at the age of 59. She was buried in New York. The next survivor is Selina Rogers Cook, born 1890, in England. She was married to Mr. Cook. Selina boarded the Titanic as a second-class passenger, while her husband stayed at home. Selina survived the sinking in Lifeboat 14. Later in life, they moved to Pennsylvania, where Selina became an officer in the Daughters of the King organization. She was an active church attendant and a member of the local historical society. Selina passed away in 1964, at the age of 74, due to hemorrhage. She is buried in Pennsylvania. The next survivor is Melvina Helen Lamson Cornell, born 1856, in New York. She boarded the Titanic along with her 2 sisters. They were returning home to the United States after attending the funeral of their other sister. Melvina and one of her sisters became separated from the other sister. They survived by being rescued in Lifeboat 2. The other sister was found and boarded the last remaining lifeboat. The sisters were reunited on the Carpathia the following morning. Coincidentally, their uncle was a passenger on the Carpathia. They were reunited with him as well. Melvina passed away in 1941 at the age of 84. She was buried in New York, in the Cornell family plot. The next survivor is Ellen Corr, also known as Helen, born 1895, in Ireland. She was 16 when she left Ireland, bound for New York. 2 of her sisters were already residing there. Ellen boarded the Titanic as a third-class passenger and survived the sinking. Ellen was the head waitress at the Royal Restaurant. Around 1922, she married Mr. Sweeney. They spent the rest of their lives in the Bronx and had no children. Ellen passed away at the House of Holy Comforter in 1980 at the age of 84. She was buried in New York, next to her husband. The next survivor is Robert Frederick W. Cooper, born 1883, in England. He was married and his occupation was listed as a fireman on the Titanic. Robert's monthly income was £6 or $29.20. He passed away in 1941 at the age of 58. Robert was buried in England in an unmarked grave. The next survivor is the Coutts family. Mother, Mary Trainor Coutts. Son, William Locke Coutts. Son, Neville Leslie Coutts. Mary Trainor Coutts, born 1876, in Ireland. She married Mr. Coutts, and they had 2 sons. The family decided to immigrate to the United States. Mr. Coutts went first, and would send for them later. He had a job in New York, as an engraver. Prior to immigrating, they had been living in London. Mary was 36 years of age, and the sons were 9 and 3 when they boarded the Titanic as second-class passengers. They were rescued in Lifeboat 2. After the happy reunion in New York, the family relocated to New Jersey. Mary passed away in her home in 1960 at the age of 84. She was cremated, and her ashes were given to her younger son Neville. William Locke Coutts, born 1902, in England. He later married and had 2 daughters. He passed away in 1957 at the age of 55 due to a stroke. He was buried in Pennsylvania. Neville Leslie Coutts, born 1908, in England. He passed away in 1977 at the age of 68. He was cremated, and the whereabouts of his remains is unknown. The next survivor is Frederick Horace Crafter, born 1891, in England. He was married and his occupation was listed as a steward on the Titanic. Frederick was rescued in Lifeboat 15. He passed away in 1960, at the age of 68. Frederick was buried in Australia, in an unmarked grave. The next survivor is Alfred George Crawford, Sr., born 1869, in England. He was married, and they had 2 children. Alfred worked on the Titanic as a bedroom steward, first class. He was instructed, by Captain Smith, to get into Lifeboat 8. Alfred rowed doggedly for 5 hours, under the direction of seaman Thomas Jones, until the Carpathia came into view. He returned to Southampton, and continued to working at sea, serving the merchant service during World War I. Alfred testified at the American inquiry into the Titanic disaster. He passed away in 1938, at the age of 68. Alfred was buried in England, at the Old Cemetery. In 2024, Alfred's grave was resorted, and paid for by the British Titanic Society. The next survivor is Laura May Cribb Bazell, born 1895, in New Jersey. She boarded the Titanic with her father, and were third-class passengers. Laura was 16 years of age, at the time of the disaster. She was rescued in Lifeboat 12, by the Carpathia. Her father perished in the sinking. In 1916, she married Mr. Bazell, in England. They returned to the United States. In 1919, they moved from Arizona to New Mexico, and was a 27-year resident. She was a member of the Epworth Church, and the Rebecca Lodge No. 13. Laura was also a past president of LAPM, in Hobbs, New Mexico. She passed away in 1974, at the age of 78, due to a recent brain hemorrhage. Laura was buried in New Mexico. She is survived by 3 daughters, 2 sons, 1 brother, 19 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. The next survivor is James Crimmins, born 1891, in England. He was a fireman on the Titanic, and was on duty. Many years later, James stated the following: "I was in the stokehole, working in just a vest and short pants. I heard a shout, 'Every man for himself.' I dashed up to the boat deck, where there were crowds of passengers milling about, near lifeboats being lowered. I helped where I could, and got away myself, among those in the last lifeboat. I was the only one in the lifeboat, who was half naked. Mrs. Astor ripped her big fur muff down the middle, to wrap around me. I reckon, that saved my life. We had to wait 4.5 hours, before we were picked up by the Carpathia." James continued to work in the merchant service, including Windsor Castle. It was acting as a troop ship, when it was torpedoed, in the Mediterranean. James's last years were plagued by ill health. He lived in the Salvation Army hostel. James passed away in 1956, at the age of 64. He is buried in England, and his grave is marked by a wooden cross. The next survivor is the Crosby family. Mother, Catherine Elizabeth Halstead Crosby. Daughter, Harriet Rebecca Crosby. Catherine Elizabeth Halstead Crosby, born 1848, in New York. She boarded the Titanic with her husband and their daughter. Catherine and her daughter survived, but Mr. Crosby perished in the sinking. She passed away in 1920, at the age of 71, due to cerebral thrombosis. Catherine was buried in Wisconsin. Harriet Rebecca Crosby, born 1873, in Michigan. In 1892, she married Mr. Giles. Unfortunately, the marriage failed, resulting in a divorce. There were no children from this marriage. In 1910, she traveled to Paris to study music. At a party, Harriet met Mr. Bourdois, and they became lovers. Harriet's parents met her in Paris, and they traveled to England. On February 11, 1912, Harriet gave birth to a baby girl. They continued on to France. While preparing to travel home, Harriet left her child behind, to be cared for by a nanny at a boarding school. They were not reunited until over a year later. After the Titanic disaster, Harriet maintained her interest in music. She relocated to California, where she lived with her daughter. In 1941, she passed away in a hospital at the age of 67 due to cancer. Interestingly, her death certificate lists her husband as Mr. Bourdois, but they were never married. It was Harriet's wish to be interred with her mother and father. Daughter Andre could not afford the cost of reopening the crypt. Harriet's body was cremated, and her ashes were interred in an adjacent crypt. In 1995, the mausoleum had fallen into disrepair and was opened. In 1997, the remains of the Crosby family were reinterred together in Wisconsin. A historic plaque rests at the base of the tree. The flat markers for the Crosby are shown at the bottom right of this photo. The next survivor is George Frederick Crowe, born 1886, in England. He was married in 1904. George worked on the Titanic as a dining room steward, first class. When the Titanic hit the iceberg, George felt shaking and thought they had dropped a propeller. George went up on deck and left in lifeboat 14. He stayed in the lifeboat and returned to the wreck site, looking for survivors. They only found 4, and one of them was William Hoyt, whom passed away in the lifeboat. George testified at the American Inquiry, stating that the Titanic broke into as it sank. He remarried 2 more times, and had 1 daughter. George passed away in 1960, at the age of 73. He was buried in New Jersey. The next survivor is Charles James Cullen, born 1863, in England. He was a bedroom steward, first class. Charles was rescued in lifeboat 11. He was married 2 times, and with his second wife, they had 4 children. Charles passed away in 1939, at the age of 76, due to heart failure. He was buried in England. The next survivor is Florence Thayer Cummings Swain, born 1876, in Massachusetts. She was married to Mr. Cummings, and they had 3 sons. Florence boarded the Titanic with her husband. She survived the sinking in lifeboat 4, but her husband perished in the sinking. Florence remarried the same year, following the disaster. She passed away in 1949, at the age of 72. Florence was buried in Massachusetts. The next survivor is Andrew Orr Cunningham, born 1873, in Scotland. There is no information available on this individual. I am leaving this lily for you, you are not forgotten. The following information was obtained and used from Encyclopedia Titanica website. Andrew was married in 1901, and they had 2 children. He was a bedroom steward, and his monthly income was £3 or $14.60. Andrew was stationed on sea deck, and was in charge of 9 staterooms. At around 2 a.m., Andrew and his mate threw themselves into the water, and swam about 3/4 of a mile away from the Titanic. From there, they watched the Titanic sink. Both men were rescued by Lifeboat 4. Andrew resumed his career at sea and sailed the dangerous water of World War I. During peacetime, he worked mainly for Cunard, and spent most of his time working as a bedroom steward in the 1920s. By 1930, he was still listed on the Berengaria. Andrew was described as 5 foot, 11 inches tall, and weighed 190 pounds. He passed away in 1932, at the age of 59. Andrew was buried in England. If you like this content, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to my channel at MeTime806. Thank you very much.